Hey, folks, it's getting wackier. One doomsday bell attorney is asking a judge to schedule their trial for 2 years down the road, while the other's arguing, heck with her. I want my day in court immediately. Well, it sounds like the accused murderers want more than just having their trials separated. It almost seems like destructive love for one another is dividing them. But that's not all. We got a ton of true crime to discuss, so it's time to get started. And let's get going on this week's Profiling Evil Weekly Crime Recap. Welcome to this week's crime recap on Profiling Evil. I want to start with new information released in the Chris Watts case. A new video of a police interview with Watts' former mistress, Nicole Kessinger, showed in even more detail how psychopathic his responses were when she questioned him about the disappearance of his wife, Shanna Watts, and their daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. I don't think any of us will ever forget it. And you're going to notice I didn't say his daughters. I'm still struggling with that one. Whether I hate to admit they were his daughters or not, it's still unbelievable to me that he could justify killing them for the fantasy that he was chasing. Now, Nicole's interview reveals that she texted Watts saying, "What did you do, Chris? What did you do?" She then texted, "Where is your family?" She knew, and yet she continued to hang in there. It seems like the light, though, was finally turning on, and Kessinger later sends a final text saying, "If you did anything bad, you're going to ruin your life, and you're going to ruin my life. I promise you that." Well, I think her life was already ruined. And true to his psychopathic personality, Chris Watts simply responded, "I didn't hurt my family, Nikki." I feel like I'm watching the Scott Peterson show interacting with his mistress, Amber Fry. I sat there scratching my head as I listened to Kessinger say there wasn't anything out of the ordinary or anything that would scare me. I still look back at that and I wonder, I don't see any red lights about the way he was doing things, like the way he spoke about his family. I'd be interested in knowing if you saw any red lights, like, hey, here's a red light. He's still married. Oh, here's another red light. He lied to you about his wife being pregnant. Well, what are the lies that you recall, folks? I'm going to be looking for your comments down below and what red lights you saw and wondering why didn't she? But let's move on and talk about Chad and Lori Daybell. They have a court date now, and it's scheduled for January of 2023. Now, they're accused of murdering Vallo's children, Joshua J.J. Vallo and Tylee Ryan. And the judge is making them stand trial together. The theatrics were impressive as 7th District Judge Stephen Boyce denied Chad Daybell's motion to sever the case. I'm betting that guy's just scratching his head, wishing he could have severed the relationship too. But he's probably holding out hope that his loving spouse and his doomsday companion won't turn state's evidence on him. I say that because I keep waiting for him or her to turn state's evidence on each other. Don't you wonder who's going to be the first to turn? Now, what I really found interesting, though, was the judge agreeing that it would save the state money to try the two people together. Plus, they'd only have to pay per diem to expert witnesses once. But the expert witnesses are losing out on going to Yellowstone, too, since the judge has now moved the trials to Ada County, clear on the other side of Idaho. So, what do you think of the hearing where the prosecution and the defense were arguing about when the trial should happen and how long it should take? Here's a play-by-play according to my Cliff Notes. The state asked the judge to block out 10 weeks for the trial, 1 week for jury selection, and 8 to 9 weeks for witness testimony. Well, clearly they have a whole bunch of folks that they're planning to bring in to help prove that Lori and Chad killed the children. I was a little surprised at first when the state asked that the trial be scheduled for September of 2023, and I wondered how you felt about that. But then the light kind of turned on for me, and I realized they might be hoping that this extended amount of time would give mental health providers the time they need to get Lori's mental health competency restored so that she can stand trial. I intently watched Chad Daybell as he sat and watched the exchange, kind of like he usually does, emotionless. But his attorney, John Pryor, wasn't emotionless, complaining that his client is being forced to remain in jail. Pryor wants the trial to happen in about 6 months, adding that he felt like he could complete the entire trial in 6 weeks' time. I'm sure he's hoping that the judge would agree to a trial sooner than later, effectively taking this wild card of what Lori may say or may do out of the equation. Well, speaking of Lori, her attorney says he's not started putting together his case. He hasn't even put the defense together, and he agreed that it would really help out to have 2 years roughly to get ready. Now, Pryor sharply went against Lori's attorney, recommending that instead, it's not Chad's fault. It's Lori's fault if she isn't ready. Chad wants his day in court now. Well, in the end, the judge said he's sticking to the January 2023 date, and everyone is left wondering what's going to happen if Lori is competent and what's going to happen if Lori isn't competent. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Now, I want to talk about a couple of cases I did on Court TV this week. Law enforcement is asking for your help in finding Naomi Irion of Fernley, Nevada. It's a little tiny town about 30 miles east of Reno. Her family reported her missing on March 12th after she didn't return home from work. When the police looked at surveillance video, they found that she was in the Walmart parking lot at about 5:30 that morning, just like every other morning. You see, she goes there and parks her car and takes a shuttle to her job. Those same surveillance videos that picked her up in that parking lot also picked up a strange man wandering back and forth, almost like he was waiting for somebody. When Naomi arrived, he approached her vehicle, and within seconds, she moved to the passenger seat and he took control of the vehicle and it left. So the question was she abducted or was this a planned meeting? The video doesn't show if there was a weapon displayed or whatever he may have had to get immediate compliance from her. Or again, my question, is it possible that it was a planned meeting? Now, a planned meeting still doesn't quite make as much sense to me since she never made it to work later. She didn't call in sick, and her car was found abandoned 3 days later on a side street, about a half a mile from the last place she was seen. Now, look at it on this map because I think it's really interesting. Some media accounts are suggesting that the suspect in this case came from a transient camp. That just doesn't make sense to me. In fact, when we look at it on this map, it seems more likely that he parked his vehicle out of the way and walked to the Walmart where he intended on either getting in her car in a voluntary fashion or creating the abduction. But from there, he then drove back because what we do know is her car was found about 3 days later in this location where police recovered some video. I thought it would be interesting. Let's just listen as I discuss some of my thoughts on the case with Vinnie Politan on Court TV.
All right, Mike King, let's pick it up from there. He gets inside the vehicle. Where are they going, right? The car is found relatively close to where they are. So what happens in the next phase of this? Because we're searching for him, we're searching for her. What could have possibly happened between the time that they get into the car to the time that the car is then left behind and something else happens here?
I agree with Bobby that this is an orchestrated, targeted event. The question is, was it a planned event, and could she have possibly been involved, that they were meeting to head off somewhere together? I think that's really less likely in this case, but it has to be considered as we think through this. But as part of this entire guise, it appears that there is this opportunity to get in the vehicle. So does he say, hey, I need help getting something, or can you help me jump a car? But somehow he gets access to this young woman, gets into her vehicle. It appears he then travels a short distance through the parking lot to where his vehicle is waiting, and then gets her into that vehicle somehow. I think the vehicle really is interesting, Vinny, when we start looking at what we're seeing, and if the images are accurate and the descriptions are accurate. This is a 3/4 ton pickup, so that's a little heftier pickup than most of us drive when we're throwing our lawn clippings in. It might be somebody who pulls a horse trailer or something like that. And as we look at the way this person walks, if we look at cameras in the area, especially at those inside that Walmart or at the convenience stores around the area, I suspect that someone's got some video somewhere that would really help police get a closer look at the face of this individual. But again, that truck's pretty unique. It's got pretty shiny chrome wheels, which means it probably isn't a farm work truck, but it might be a truck that pulls horses around or something like that. So we start looking in the area. We start looking at things in the area like the registered sex offenders. And it's not an indictment just because someone has had that background, but the state and Washoe County there keep very clear records of what a registered sex offender uses as a preferential victim. And there are a batch of houses to start looking at. When I looked online, there were at least 76 registered sex offenders just in that immediate area. So there's some footwork that needs to be done immediately. And then you got to start looking at the cell tower analysis that the Bureau has done, and the azimuth or the direction that that tower was pointing, and what kind of information can we start to extrapolate from that to the point of the last ping on the phone, and whether something can be gained from that. There's a ton of evidence available. It's just piecing this all together, and it really boils down to somebody is going to recognize that truck. They're going to recognize that gate. I doubt that a 3/4 ton pickup truck is traveling from Sacramento to Salt Lake City on that route that travels through there. It's probably going to be somebody close by.
Mike King, it is now March 22nd. This happened on the 12th. We're talking about 10 days. Do you think we are looking for the suspect and Naomi still in the same place? Or do you think we are searching for her in one place and the suspect somewhere completely different?
These are so challenging because you think about the fantasy process that's going on in the predator's mind when they go and stalk and then take a victim like this. It's really difficult to say, Vinny, because we don't know if that predator in their wacky mind somehow think they're having a relationship and they're trying to maintain and have an ongoing relationship where this person's trapped and being held against their will, or if they're a more sadistic kind of a predator that could go as far as terminating life. And that's really a difficult thing to imagine and think about, but we have to consider that. And so law enforcement has to start establishing grid searches. They have to start looking at all of the information they have in databases, and they've got to be going through every bit of those cameras. I thought of Bobby's comment about gambling, and it really hadn't struck me, but they've got to be talking to the casinos and getting all the video there, because this guy surely has worn the same clothing. He surely has worn that same pair of boots, and he surely has been hanging around in that parking lot trying this in other places. While she may have been his preferential victim, he would have also been the kind of guy that would have taken some kind of a substitute along the way. Well, folks, I hope you'll dig into this case a little more this week, and please put your comments down below on what your theory is. Make sure you're also taking time to respond to comments from other viewers. The suspect in this case is described as a man who's about 6 feet tall. He's believed to be driving this dark-colored 2020 or newer Chevrolet High Country pickup. It has 4 doors, really distinctive, and look at those chrome wheels. Naomi Irion is 5'11" tall and about 240 pounds. She has brown hair and green eyes. She has both sides of her nose pierced as well as the septum pierced. And she has a smiley tattoo on one of her ankles. She was last seen wearing a blue Panasonic shirt with a gray sweater and sweatpants. and she had this knockoff pair of UGG boots on. So if you know anything about this case, please contact police through the Secret Witness Program at 775-322-4900. Now, finally, I want to talk about the unsolved murder of Damian West, an unarmed security officer in Chesterfield, Virginia. I appeared on Court TV with retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon to talk about this young man who was brutally slain. You know, I think police know who committed this murder, but they just need your help to tie up a few loose ends. Hopefully, that way his mother and certainly his son would get justice for their son and father. Please go over to Court TV and watch the entire interview, especially so you can hear the victim's mother. It is heart-wrenching. Damian was only 28 years old when he was found beaten to death at the Ivy Walk Apartments. He'd had an altercation with some teens earlier in the evening, and I think that's really important. And I think it's important to remind you that he was an unarmed security guard. Listen as I share my thoughts about the case, and then listen to the passionate close to this segment that my colleague Bobby Chacon gave. I was blown away by his statement. It was so powerful. Folks, if you know something, say something, and let's get this family the justice they deserve.
Mike King, that is such an indicator of the character of this young man that we lost. Your thoughts tonight?
Mrs. B.O.L.O, first, what a handsome son, and looked like just an incredible dad. So sorry about what you've gone through the last 13 years. I'm so glad you have an investigator on your side like you've got, because it is clear how he feels about not only solving this case, but about being your advocate through the process. These are difficult cases, and as you look at the information that we're seeing just on screen, Vinny, there appears to be evidence and debris through a pretty large area. So my questions go to, was this an ambush type of event where he was forced off the road, or was he pursuing somebody and pulled off and bailed out and ran into the woods? And those are all questions I know that law enforcement has a solid understanding for and an answer for. But then what really happened inside the woods there? And it has been absolutely devastating for Mom to see some of the pictures or see some of the information. But we have to kind of keep in mind too, sometimes I just remember another Mrs. B.O.L.O by a different name who was so traumatized by some of the bruising that she saw on her son, when in reality it was just when the body stops circulating blood, the body kind of pools and makes it look like bruising. So hopefully this was more sudden than a terrible beating. But we're behind you 100%, and I believe this is one that can be solved because consciences catch up with people as they mature.
Absolutely.
And hopefully somebody's going to get the courage.
Bobby Chacon, we're a little short on time. We only have about 30 seconds, but your thoughts about justice tonight for
it's a horrendous case, Vinny. This is just horrendous. The brutality of this against a man who was doing nothing but trying to help that community. He was out there trying to keep that community safe and do the right thing. That community now owes him. They owe him to come forward and say what they know, because he died protecting them. He died doing the right thing, keeping their community safe. And they owe it to him to come forward and say what they know. The police know enough. They probably just need one little more piece, it sounds like. So this community, this man gave his life for the protection of this community. They owe him a debt now, and it's time to repay that debt.
Well, there you got it. These are the kinds of cases that you can solve, folks. I want to thank Vinny Politan and the Court TV team for the chance I have each week to look into these unsolved mysteries. And now it's time for you to weigh in on these cases down below. Take a minute and share your thoughts, and make sure you're interacting with your fellow true crime buffs. I'm going to be watching for your comments and participating, so thanks again for taking time to do so. Remember, you can find Profiling Evil on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, you can find our Profiling Evil podcast series on your favorite podcast platform. This year, we're doing Cults Among Us. And don't forget, check us out on the World Wide Web at profilingevil.com. And please, please, please hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget, consider joining our channel memberships. My personal favorite, it's the Academy level, folks. It's the only place you're going to get additional information and a little bit of homework. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.